Well, good morning, and it is morning on in the last week of January 2021, and we are going to be examining the beautiful woodland behind me, or the wooded area, and we are here on the outskirts of Plymouth. It's called Central Park. You can even see here, such a clear day in the background, we can see a ship and we can see the breakwater. So off we go. We're now going to go into this beautiful woodland and we're going to have a lovely time looking at the signs of spring, but also that which just is there in the winter, the beauty of the British woodland. Just literally a minute or so away from the noise of the city there, we have these well-established coppiced areas. You can see here some lovely oak trees here, towering above us. We see some of the more relatively recent introduced species. This here is an overwintering buddleia, which obviously we know gets very well established in gardens and all around our country. We can see here overwintering leaves of campion, and of course the blackberry, the bramble, often overwinters very well in this country. As of course the ivy, the evergreen ivy, and in the background we can see some tongue fern. We have some young oak down in this area, and you can see the catkins there of the characteristic ones of the hazel tree. Excuse me. Young silver birch trees. One right there. And a relatively young oak tree we can see. Rooks. Even some slightly overwintering stinging nettles. Just looking at the black buds on this tree will tell us it's an ash tree, and this one fortunately does not seem to have been affected in the past few years with ash dieback. It often seems to be where it's a pure stand of ash that most problems come with large amounts of trees just succumbing to the disease. Here we can see in the lower story the elder, that's E-L-D-E-R, the elder, where we get the elderflower and elderberries. Here, gradually just the sap will be rising. Even actually here, if we look carefully here, it's quite clear to see there. We've got sort of some bud development there, and these are some of the early plant species to actually come into flower as we know, along with things like the sycamore. But just walking through here, it is a very peaceful place indeed. Hear the chirp there of the magpie in the background. Yes, there's even some leaves coming through there. Look at that on the elder. Look at that there. You can actually see that's actually quite beautiful to see. And this is now the last week of January, but we have a very temperate climate. We're very close to the sea here as well. Also conifer there. I'm not exactly sure what that one is, actually. Not over sure really what that one is, but it's surviving here. A whole carpet of ivy, and looks like there was tongue fern there, and we can see looks like bracken, oak fern, and a very, very well thriving bramble there, and a lovely example of a silver birch. You can hear the wood pigeon there, the blackbird, the robin. And here we have the alder rather than the elder. Here they have their quite sort of distinctive catkins. It's a nice maturing tree there. Some of these trees would have been planted here by the various conservation groups and through the council. Some undoubtedly would be natural regeneration. Such a beautiful blue sky today. You can still see some of there's the ash keys there from last autumn. The magpies are so much more tame around here. They're obviously used to seeing people passing by. You can see here under the understory here there are some daffodils developing there. You can see the more distinctive shape there of the alder tree. And it's good to see a good amount of lichens on the branches of many of the trees. Indicator, of course, of good air quality. Yeah, look at that example. Look at that. See, if you're out in the countryside now, you would never be getting that close to a magpie. They know they're not going to be shot at by the farmer. And the little songbirds there. They're probably making more racket now because of the birds around them than because I'm here. There's a tree that's nice to see, but not too many of them. There's a beech tree, very well established here. Obviously, you know, it gives a very thick canopy in the summertime, blocking out a lot of light. I'm hoping you can hear the very distinctive bird song. The many species of birds that are here. A large number of the tit family, your blackbird, you've got sparrows. Must be Mr. Robin Redbreast. There we are. There we are. One of my favourite places here. I would have walked along here as a boy, growing up in Plymouth, and these trees would still be very well established then. Well, certainly the one in the background there. The squirrels aren't quite so tame in this area. And other parks around Plymouth, they're fed a lot more and get very, very close to people. What a magnificent sight to see that lovely old oak tree bursting with life that we cannot see, of course. There we have some, I think some tits. It could be a blue tit, I think, in the branches up there. There it is, yes. Having a little look around for food. Of course, it won't be until February, March, April, 3-4 months before we see any significant leaf growth here. But even these bare leaves have such a beauty, don't they? One of the advantages of the deciduous trees. We have some pennywort here, and the abundant ivy. Looks like some activity there of a woodpecker, possibly. It seems quite fresh. We'll have a look in a moment at some of the lovely established trees down on the paths, and you know, I mean, we're looking at trees here that are 150, 200 years old if they're a day. Of course, the ivy here gives lots of shelter to birds and animals. Squirrels will build their drays up amongst the branches. Of course, food supply as well, the berries. Many of the pigeons enjoy feasting on these. Okay, we're going to drop down now further and have a look at some of the larger trees. We have a whole mixture of beech trees, sycamore trees, oak trees. In the background we can see some of the very common rhododendron thriving there as an evergreen amongst the evergreen ivy. Beautiful twisted oak trees, lovely to see. Not so good for timber, but lovely to look at. Now if we look carefully we can tell that must be a ash tree just by its buds, let alone its bark. Dead and dying timber is very important, so it's good that these have been left here, these logs, for they can rot down and decay and give a lovely food source for many decades. Even the carrion crow there in the background, relatively tame compared to those you come across right in the countryside. Obviously this being a urban setting, a woodland. Here's one of the leaf shedding conifers, which seems to be a contradiction, a larch, trying to compete there for light with this beast next to it. Of course, the vast amount of leaves that are just falling on this ground are each autumn just adding in such important nutrients to the ground. Nice to see a conifer there. Looks like it's actually looks like a larch initially. I think it is a larch because it's either that or it's a very poorly conifer that has been losing its needles. I think it's a larch, yeah. It's a larch there, so it's still retaining quite a lot of its fruiting structures, the cones there. There we have a crow surveying the area. Here we have a whole avenue going down here of beech trees. In the backdrop there we have a lovely, magnificent oak tree. Look at that one there, just extending its branches out. One of the only tree species that can thrive, possibly thrive, under the beech. There is the holly and the ivy. And here we have a nice little stand of pine, probably Scots pine I think there, look, reaching up to the sky. There's quite a few there, I can see 3. Just peering in past this holly, there is a giveaway sign that we are in spring, because there we have some very early developed bluebells, and I would reckon they are Spanish ones. They look very well developed indeed, because we're talking about many months before there would be any flowers, and they seem very well developed. Bit of a laurel here we have. Going to grow underneath the Scots pine. And there's the pine there with its main needles, leaves at the very top there. Now this branch of the pine tree is nice and low, so we can have a nice look there at the beauty of the needles, and there's even a fir cone for us as well. It's very beautiful to behold, isn't it? Lovely. Such a lot still to enjoy and to experience when it is winter time. Obviously it's much nicer when the sun's out and it's not raining. Obviously a very popular place, as is the countryside, as in the very rural woodlands. Here also, very popular are the more urban woodland settings. I think I just heard a woodpecker then, but not too sure. That was a magpie, of course, then, but there's a lovely understory tree, the hawthorn. Gives the very characteristic red berries, which have all been eaten up now over the past autumn and winter. The background, we have the distinctive shape, I would say, of a older tree. And there as well. Okay, technically going out of woodland area now, going into more of a parkland setup. But still very beautiful just to be able to look at some of the trees around here. A lot of this park would have been enclosed 150 years or so ago. And you do have some of the existing hedgerows that would have been making the marks between the different fields. So you still have lots of lovely species of trees established on these hedges. Hawthorn, well there, look there, and there's some berries from last year from that hawthorn. Oak trees, sycamore, rose, dog rose, this would be here. In some ways they can do with a trim back. It's good if it was agricultural land, you'd need to trim them back so it wasn't going to be shading out the beautiful, there's beautiful, talking about beautiful, it's a blackbird. Nice to see. Yes, shading out the pasture land. But it is just nice to see here. Look at this, the berries here of the ivy still developing, kind of. Not too sure what to do with themselves. Usually there's just lots of lovely black berries. Perhaps they are just, say, a bit confused with the lengthening the seasons. That looks like there's a blackthorn there. That is a young blackthorn. There's a blackthorn. Good blackthorn hedges for us as farmers can be very good for keeping in and out stock. Mr. Blackbird here is not too concerned me following him. Lovely branches come out there of a oak tree. The buds just getting ready, but not for many more months yet. The sycamore will come out before them, a month or more before them at least. Here we can see the remnants here, which is lovely to see. In some ways lovely to see, but interesting then. That would be a rosebay willow herb that would have had those beautiful purpley flowers and the characteristic white sort of seed structures coming out. Yeah, this is part of a community woodland being planted here to our left various exotic species of firs, conifers, as well as some of the more traditional trees. You can see like a tree in the background there, probably 200-300 years old. It's a very thick base indeed on that one, been cut back many times. Whereby you have trees like this here, which are probably 20-30 years old. And there's been real effort made to add to this and to turn it into a woodland. So even though it might be like, you know, very close to a city, it is still a woodland, and it still is significant. Like I said earlier, this would not be any good for commercial logging. You're not going to get very many straight planks out of that tree, are you? But of course, in the shipbuilding days, the ones with a bend or twist to them, that was fine for building wooden ships. But now obviously we like to have a bit of straighter timber to be able to make furniture. A lot of it is the management, of course. If you need to trim the branches so that the energy is going to go into the main trunk, not onto side branches. But it is beautiful to see when they are allowed just to go wild. So you can see the potential here, can't you? This is, you know, give it a few more years, give it a decade, and these trees will really have thrived and become a woodland. Maybe a coppice, but small woodland then. Obviously, for the purpose of this video, I've, you know, edited out people walking by, but so many people enjoy here in Central Park in Plymouth. Hundreds, if not thousands a day coming through, walkers. And lots of dog walkers, but just independent walkers as well, and cyclists and people jogging. Sometimes it's very good not to have the earpiece in. I must admit, I do like listening to the radio. Not so much music, but sometimes it is good just to be able to hear the sounds like we heard earlier. A lovely young conifer there. I'm not a great one on the names of my conifer. Looks like a Japanese, not too sure. It could be a cypress actually. Leyland cypress possibly. Here we are, one of the many hedges. So here's a goodbye from sunny Plymouth. I hope you've enjoyed this brief walk around parts of Central Park and enjoyed the fact there is such beauty to be seen and experienced even in the middle of winter. Although we have, as we've seen, the anticipation of spring, but even in the depths of winter it can be beautiful to be out amongst the trees